To look at the Windows Server Backup, I'm going to pull up my Server Manager, and I'm going to go to Tools, and in Tools, you'll see Windows Server Backup is in the list. But when I click on it, it says Windows Server Backup is not installed on this computer. It's kind of weird it's in the list but not installed, but that's the way it is. This is actually very telling. This actually means that Microsoft assumes that you are using a centralized backup product, not the Windows Server Backup that's natively built in. Microsoft's centralized and enterprise backup solution is called Data Protection Manager. Now that's a license paid for product, but it allows you to back up all of your servers. You can even back up clients, and you can centrally manage all of those backups. The Windows Server Backup is local to your server. So if you have 10 servers and you want to back them up using Windows Server Backup, well, first you have to install the backup on each of the 10, and then each one has to be managed independent of the others. So no centralized capability, but it is an effective backup utility. We first have to install it. I'm going to go to Manage, Add Roles and Features. Now the backup is a feature, so I'm just going to click through my server, pass roles up to Features, and if we go to the bottom of the list, near the bottom, Windows Server Backup is present. So I'm just going to click Next and Install, and that'll install the Windows Server Backup. Now, as that's installing, I'm going to go back to Windows Server Backup here in Server Manager. Now, one thing I did not mention, when it says the Windows Server Backup is not installed, that always begs the question, well, why does it show up if it's actually not installed? The reason, when I click on Windows Server Backup here, online backups is still an option. If I wanted this backed up to Azure, I could simply use the online backup capability. So that's why it's actually present, even though it's not installed. Now, if I go back to Server Manager, that is finished. So the install succeeded. So I'm just going to close that. I'm going to go back to Windows Server Backup. And I'm going to click on the local backup. And you'll see now, it just says no backup has been configured on this computer. So the service is actually loaded. Now, to configure a backup, you really only have two options. You can back up on a schedule, or you can back up once. They're really the same configuration. The only difference, if I had selected backup schedule, this schedule backup option will let me just choose a day and time that I want to back up. If you just want to back up one time, you just choose your different options here. Now, I'm actually going to cancel this, and I am going to click on the backup schedule. On the selected backup configuration, it says, what do you want to back up? Everything. That'd be like a full server backup would be every single thing. And it says I need 63 gigs if I want to do that. Or you can configure a custom backup and you just selectively decide. Well, I'm going to click full server first. What time do you want to back up? I'm going to say 10 p.m. Do you want to back up more than once a day? You could select multiple times a day that you can back this server up. And the destination. Do you want to back up to a dedicated hard disk? Like this would be an attached disk to your server. Do you want to back up to a volume? Now, this volume cannot be a volume you're backing up. So it's not possible to back up this server and have it backed up to the C drive, because that's actually part of the backup itself. So it'd have to be a volume that's not part of the backup itself, or you can back up to a shared folder. If you wanted to back up to a shared folder, it would simply ask you for the path. Now, we get this warning when I select it that says when you use a shared folder as your destination, each backup will erase the previous and only the latest will be available. That's because it does not create a hierarchy. It's going to be in a folder named Windows Server Backup. Now, one thing you can do is script it to that location, have it append like the date to it if you choose to. But you would just specify the path and it would simply back up to that path. If you were to back up to a volume, you'll see it says no volumes can be used to store backups, because all my volumes are actually part of the server itself. So I would simply need a drive that is not part of my server itself that's actually being backed up. And same for the dedicated hard disk. You would just have to have a disk, and that's the recommended option, but it says no disks are available. A dedicated hard disk would even be classified as a USB drive. If you have that connected to your server and you want to back up to that, that would be an option. The only one we have a concern with overwriting is backing up to a share. Now, do be aware, if you choose to back up to a dedicated disk, it says the hard disk you use will be formatted and then dedicated only to store backups. So you could not have a drive that you save data to that you access or users access and store backups on the same drive. It's going to format it, erase everything on it, and it's going to be dedicated to just backups. Now, those of you that have been in IT in the past, you may have backed up to a tape. That is no longer an option. If you want to have your backup stored on a tape, what you would have to do is like back up to a drive. Then from the drive, you could have it written to tape. But natively, there's not going to be an option that would let you choose to directly back up to tape. Now, I'm going to go back to the beginning here. So for full server backup, that's the entire configuration. You just choose your time you want to back up. You choose the destination type, and that's it. Dedicated disk, a volume, a share, and you would be done configuring the backup. Now, if I choose custom, it has some pretty neat options here. I can add items, and you can even select what you want to back up. So I could say I want to back up just my Hyper-V configuration. These are my virtual machines, RTS, DC1, Serve1, Serve2. So I could back up on a certain schedule, just the Hyper-V configuration. I could even selectively just back up like one virtual machine if I wanted to do that. So this would just be a backup for RTS DC1. Maybe you do that because you're going to back these up at different times. Depends on what your goal actually is. But pretty fascinating overall. We also have the option, I'm going to just deselect those, for system state. System state is the operating system and all installed applications. If you were on a domain controller and you wanted to back up your domain controller, you could simply back up the system state data, and that would back up the operating system along with Active Directory, DNS, all your other configurations and application settings. Now, there's also a bare metal recovery. That is everything with the exclusion of Hyper-V. So Hyper-V is never part of the bare metal recovery. What we can do with the bare metal recovery is you can back this up. Then, if you needed to restore it, you could actually boot from the Windows Server 2019 DVD, and we've seen this option before. When you boot from the DVD, you'll press any key, then you'll choose your keyboard layout, language, currency. Then it comes up to a screen that has the Install Now option. Well, the bottom left of that screen, there's a repair. If you click repair, it'll ask you if you want to restore from a backup. So if you have this bare metal recovery backup that you've created, you could have this, let's say on a USB drive. You click repair when you boot from the DVD. You could say, I want to restore from a system image I created earlier. And you could browse your USB drive and click on this very backup, and it would completely restore that backup to your server, and you would be back online. Now, how long that takes depends on how much data you're actually backing up. Pretty fascinating overall. Now, if I were to choose just this without the Hyper-V, I'm going to click OK. And I'm just going to choose Next. I could choose a backup time. Destination, shared folder, wherever I want to back up to. But I'm going to click OK. I'm going to choose one of my other machines, this RTS AIO/backup. And we'll see if that can connect. So I'm going to click Next. Now it wants my username. Now I can just click Finish, and it's going to schedule that backup. Now that was our backup on a schedule. Now I'm going to go through backup once, and I'm going to choose very similar options. I'm going to say I want custom. I'm going to add items, and I'm going to do the bare metal recovery. So everything other than Hyper-V, and I'm going to choose OK. And we'll go Next. I'm going to back it up to a shared folder. Now, the layout is slightly different if you go through backup once or your backup schedule, but same options, just kind of different wording. Now, for access control, it says, do you want to inherit permissions of the folder you back up to? So I can say, yes, I want to inherit those permissions. So I'm going to back up to this folder I already have, a shared folder named backup. Whatever permissions this folder has applied, the backup will inherit. Or I can tell the backup, do not inherit those permissions, and you would have to set permissions directly on the backup itself to govern who can access it. But I'm just going to leave it on inherit. Now it wants credentials. And I'll just say OK. And we will just click backup, and that's going to start backing up. Now, it's going to take a while because it's a full operating system backing up to a shared folder across the network. So we'll let that run. But as it runs, you can see how much data is actually being transferred. Now, we'll speed up the video a bit because that will take quite a bit of time. Now that that's complete, I can see my backup with the timestamp. I can see that it was successful. And if I needed to restore this backup, I would simply go to recover and I could restore all of that content.